The morning sky hung heavy, painted in pale grey, as distant church bells tolled softly, their mournful chime echoing through the quiet town. Mourners moved slowly through the wrought iron gates of the cemetery, their faces etched with sorrow, their footsteps heavy on the dew-kissed grass. Among them stood Emily, a young girl no older than 10, her small frame trembling beside the polished wooden coffin that held her father, the only parent she had ever truly known. He had been her light, the one who wove bedtime stories that carried her to dreamlands, who wiped away her tears with gentle hands, who promised, with a voice warm and steady, that she would never be alone. But life, in its cruel unpredictability, shatters even the most heartfelt promises. As the final shovels of earth fell upon his resting place, Emily's world collapsed in a silence louder than any scream. She clutched a worn teddy bear, its fur matted from hours of tear-soaked embraces, her swollen eyes betraying a grief too vast for her young heart to hold. She didn't yet know that her pain was only beginning to unfold. Friends and neighbors murmured among themselves, their voices low, lamenting the cruelty of fate that had stolen Emily's father so soon. But just a few feet behind her, veiled in black and wearing the mask of a grieving widow, stood her stepmother, Margaret. Her cold smile and impatient eyes betrayed a heart untouched by sorrow. Grief had no place within her, only a simmering resentment that had festered since the day she entered Emily's life. She had never wanted the girl, never accepted her as part of the family she envisioned with Emily's father. Now, with him gone, nothing restrained her disdain. As the funeral drew to a close, Emily's teddy bear was soaked with tears, and Margaret's words cut through the air like shards of ice. "You don't belong here anymore," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. The crowd dispersed, their heads bowed, unwilling to meet the girl's pleading eyes. Emily stood frozen, her world unraveling, as the weight of those words settled into her bones. If you believe in the power of kindness, in second chances that can mend a broken soul, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Midnight Tales. Your support helps us share stories of hope and humanity with the world. The day stretched on, the sun piercing through the grey clouds, casting a harsh light on the mourners as they drifted away one by one. Emily, dressed in a plain cream dress that hung loosely on her fragile frame, was led back to the large house that had once been her sanctuary. It no longer felt like home. The warmth of her father's laughter, the comfort of his presence, had vanished, replaced by an oppressive chill. Margaret wasted no time. She stormed into Emily's room, yanking clothes from drawers with reckless abandon, stuffing them into an old, battered suitcase. The suitcase was tossed onto the driveway like discarded refuse, as though Emily herself were nothing more than unwanted baggage. Emily's voice cracked as she begged, "Please, Mommy, forgive me." She hadn't done anything wrong, but in her desperation, she thought those words might soften her stepmother's heart. Instead, Margaret grabbed a bucket of cold water and poured it over Emily's head, drenching her small body. The icy droplets mingled with her tears, streaming down her cheeks as she shivered in the summer air. Passers-by whispered among themselves, their eyes flickering with pity, but fear of involvement kept them at a distance. A man across the street shook his head, his expression heavy with sadness, but he hurried away, unable to bear the weight of the scene. Margaret smirked, her eyes glinting with satisfaction, and slammed the front door shut, leaving Emily kneeling on the ground, clutching her teddy bear, her suitcase spilled open beside her. The sun blazed overhead, the world alive with birdsong and the warmth of summer, yet for Emily, it was the coldest day she had ever known. Her small hands trembled as she tried to gather her scattered belongings, her heart pounding with the realization that she was utterly alone. Just when it seemed the world had turned its back on her, a sleek black car pulled up at the edge of the driveway. The door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, commanding, dressed in a sharp suit that spoke of wealth and influence. His name was Alexander, a millionaire businessman known in the town only by reputation. But his eyes, softened by a quiet empathy, hinted at a depth beyond his wealth. He had been on his way to a meeting when he caught sight of the scene unfolding, a child abandoned, clothes strewn across the pavement, her head bowed in humiliation. Something inside him stirred, a memory of his own childhood, of nights spent alone after his mother's death, of the sting of rejection from those meant to care for him. Without a second thought, he strode toward her. Emily lifted her head at the sound of footsteps, her heart leaping for a fleeting moment with the impossible hope that it was her father, somehow returned to save her. But it was Alexander. He knelt beside her, heedless of the puddle soaking into his expensive suit, and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. His voice, firm yet filled with compassion, cut through the haze of her despair. "This ends here," he said. "No one will ever treat you like this again." The words hung in the air, solid and unshakable, a promise carved in stone. Margaret, hearing the commotion, burst out of the house, her face flushed with anger. She hurled insults at Alexander, calling Emily a burden, insisting she wanted nothing to do with the girl. But Alexander stood unmoved, his gaze steady. "If you can abandon her on the day of her father's funeral," he said, his voice low and resolute, "you don't deserve to be called a mother. I will take her. From this day forward, she is no longer unwanted." The small crowd that had gathered gasped, whispers rippling through the air. Margaret froze, realizing she was powerless against him, not just because of his wealth, but because of the unyielding strength in his words. With a huff, she turned and slammed the door once more. For Emily, that sound no longer meant rejection. It meant freedom. Alexander carefully lifted her suitcase, picked up the teddy bear that had fallen to the ground, and took Emily's trembling hand. For the first time since the funeral, a flicker of warmth sparked in her chest. They walked to his car, leaving behind the house that had become a prison of cruelty. The days that followed were not easy. Emily woke from nightmares, crying out for her father, gripped by the fear of being abandoned again. Alexander remained patient. He hired tutors to nurture her mind, provided her with clothes that fit her small frame, but more than that, he gave her his time, his attention, his love. He sat with her through her fears, read her stories at night, and reminded her daily that she was wanted. Slowly, like a flower turning toward the sun, Emily's laughter returned. Her eyes, once dulled by sorrow, began to shine again. The child who had wept on the driveway learned to smile without fear. The town, which had once turned away from her suffering, began to take notice. Whispers of cruelty gave way to tales of compassion. They saw how Alexander, despite his wealth, valued kindness above all else. They saw Emily, once discarded, blossom into a symbol of resilience and hope. Months later, on a bright afternoon, Emily stood at her father's grave, placing a bouquet of wildflowers at its base. She whispered softly, telling him not to worry, that she was safe now. Alexander stood a few steps behind, giving her space but ready to catch her if she faltered. The sunlight broke through the clouds, bathing them both in a golden glow. Though her father was gone, Emily had found a new home, not in a house, but in the heart of someone who truly cared. If this story of heartbreak and redemption touched you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Midnight Tales. Stories like Emily's remind us that even in the darkest moments, a single act of kindness can change everything. We have a special request: leave a comment below and share what kindness means to you. Your words might inspire someone who needs hope today. As the sun set on Emily's journey from grief to healing, her story became a testament to the truth that family isn't always the one we're born into. Sometimes, it's the one we find when love steps in, unexpected and unwavering, to light the way forward.